Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS, and if you put $5 down, you can get 50 back in rewards. So go to our friends at Prize Picks. It's the fall, Connor, so sports are this is like prime time sports getting going. So go over to Prize Picks, and you want to go to some of these games? Game Time, our friends over at Game Time, use that promo code CLNS. Get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what's up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I had an epiphany today. And I think it's, with the Red Sox being 70 and 70 at the time of recording, they have plummeted in the past couple days, weeks, pretty much all of August. The Patriots are starting up soon. And boy, does that roster look terrible. I got a glimmer of hope at captain's practice this week of, a good team. Now, obviously, the Celtics exist, and they're on their way, but they're not quite back yet. They're still enjoying the fruits of their win back in June. But just seeing a winning team, a team that should win, we'll see what happens, but a team that at least there's hope. At least there's like a reason for fans to watch this fall. It just brought me a little hope that, hey, you know what? You and I, we're on the good side of it. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, it's better than watching. I think I said this before. I don't think there's anything more frustrating, more demoralizing than bad football. Like,
I agree.
Maybe like bad, I think it says like bad pitching, bad bullpen. When you got a guy that like walks 5 guys in a row, like that will drive you crazy. But I think like especially bad offense for football is the worst. There's nothing fun about it. It's a Sunday. You should be relaxed. You just get stressed out. The delivery guy gives you the wrong order, forgets like the garlic bread, forgets like the cheesy bread from Domino's, ruins everything. The vibes are all off. The fact that I think we at least will have the Bruins, obviously the Celtics will be really good as well, but as we traverse through, especially once you get to like the worst part of the year, right? Like you get past Christmas and it's like January through March, and it's just the doldrums on the calendar. These will have 2 good teams to keep tabs on. The Red Sox and Patriots, I don't know. I mean, Red Sox are pretty much they're done. Look ahead to 2025. Yeah, no way.
It's funny you mentioned stuffed cheesy bread. I just want to give a shout out to Papagino's. I go out to Foxborough a lot because Foxborough Sports Center's there. They have a lot of hockey that I have to watch, and they have Papagino. They have 2 Papaginos in Foxborough. One is right near the rink, so I will go there oftentimes before or after I leave. And I got a chicken broccoli Alfredo like a couple weeks ago from there. Interesting choice, but I wanted something.
Give it carb up. That's fine. No, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's
a lot of carbs. They gave me a ton of extra stuffed cheesy bread, so I was like, hell yes, what a move. But then driving an hour home, that was that was. But you know what? It tasted great, so that's all that matters.
I used to always like. One, do they still have the cobweb cutout of Teddy Bruschi there? I went to one recently, and they still had it. There's a little janky in there. It wasn't all that great. So, I remember back in the day, though. It was a good spot for a birthday party was Papagino's. Want to know why?
Oh.
You had your own spot. You had your own little like nook. You'd have your own corner right there, and they let you put the pizza in the oven, which I'm sure in the year of our Lord 2024, they do not let little children go behind the counter and throw pizza into the stove, just coughing on everything. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Your hands.
But back in the day, it was a blast, Evan.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's I agree. Biden's America. Can't even let the kids put the pizzas in the oven.
Well, they like you put all like the cheese and pepperoni on, which if you're like 6 years old, you're doing a shitty job. You're trying to make like a smiley face. It looks
that's the worst.
And fucked up looking afterwards. It's terrible. Yeah,
awful. Awful. So.
I'm just saying that right now, if you gave me the opportunity, I would nail it. But
I agree.
I don't think they'll let a 31-year-old man behind the counter to throw pizza into the stove.
I think they.
I haven't asked. Like maybe they will, but I don't want to I don't want to cause a ruckus.
It's one of those things. Like it's just so much pressure in that. Like I was watching a TikTok the other day of this guy because now it's popular on TikTok. People making food and watching it, and I enjoy it. And just the stroke that goes into the oven. It's like holy crap. Like
no,
that's one of those. Like I can't do that. Like I'd be like
Yeah,
like,
no, exactly.
The pizza
No,
would fall, or
hell no,
it'd be
no. It would
upside
immediately
down
fall
in the
upside
oven.
down. Yeah, I'd face plant.
Like, oh
pizza.
shit,
No.
shit. Like, it
Leave
just,
it to the
you know,
experts.
yeah, leave it to them. Anyways, we could have a weekly Papagenos podcast.
One can.
Brad
dream.
Marchand made some
Yes.
interesting comments at captain's practice after day one. Day two was on Thursday. Elias Lindholm spoke. Jonas Korpisalo spoke. Mark Kostelic spoke. Coolest part was Korpisalo had a Springsteen shirt on, which Scott McLaughlin was enthralled by. So that was the
Scott
that was
I'm
the
waiting for
best part.
Scott McLaughlin's column being like, they don't need Jeremy Swayman. Like, they got Korpisalo here.
He loves Springsteen, and he said his favorite song I heard him say was like "Born in the USA." So good for him. Springsteen's a classic.
Yeah.
Can't hate Springsteen. But Brad Marchand spoke, and he I thought he touched on a lot of interesting things. We'll get to sort of his contractual comments in a bit, but what stuck out to me, and we mentioned this a little bit on Poke the Bear, want to dive into it here, was sort of his comments he made on who he wants to be the second line right wing with him, because he acknowledged that he's going to be with Charlie Coyle most likely, at least to begin the year. And someone asked him, "Hey, what do you want on the right side?" Obviously, he's not going to come out and be like, "I want Morgan Geekie" or "I want Fabian Lysell." He's not going to do that. But he did give some insight into what they're looking for, and the big things are, we don't care if you can dangle through three people. We want someone who plays responsibly. We want someone who plays both ends of the ice. We're going to be a shutdown line, so we need someone that embraces that. And that's not, just on paper, that's not quite Fabian Lysell. That's more so someone like a Morgan Geekie or a Trent Frederick. Now, again, training camp has yet to even happen. So a lot is going to change. A lot can change. Fabian Lysell certainly can change that narrative, and I assume will make every effort to do so. But are things kind of stacked against him in this case? Not even so much from the coaching staff, but from Brad Marchand?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely probably an uphill climb, right? Because, and again, like, I think that could be also one of Marchand reinforcing to some of these younger guys. When you have a guy like Cam, you have a guy like Markulov, these younger players that, I think it's been talked about quite a bit this summer that they should be able to step in, and an opportunity should be there for them. It's also, I think, reinforcing that even if, a guy like Lysell with his skill set is really intriguing and really a dynamic player, he can't just go in and be this kind of empty calorie or one-dimensional player and expect to stick up there. Now, does that mean like if Lysell, makes one defensive miscue in the first preseason game, like Marchand's going to kick the door into Jim Montgomery's office and be like, "I want this guy off the team"? No, I don't think it's going to look bad.
No.
And if that is, that's not great, because the Bruins need to let these guys develop. And when you have a guy that has this upside in Lysell, and again, it's not to say that he's a lock to be a 25 goal scorer, right? But like, when you have a guy who has this skill set, I think some of what it takes to let these guys develop is to give them a little bit of leeway. Maybe he's not, a prototypical Bruin, right? Like in terms of what you're looking for in terms of the skill set, the physicality, the two-way play, all that stuff. Maybe he's kind of cut from a different cloth, but I think if he has a unique skill set and something that can help this team out, you roll with a guy like that. Like, this is probably a bad comparison because I'm comparing two guys who, are legends for the Bruins, but like, you look at like Rick Middleton for years, like wasn't a prototypical Bruin in terms of the way he played, right? Like, people look, it was like he's more of a Montreal kind of, very skilled player. Would Bruins fans not take Rick Middleton? David Krejci wasn't necessarily a prototypical Bruin in terms of his skill set, right? So, and again, that's not to say that Lysell is, you're going to trade him for, pennies on the dollar and he's going to be a 70-point guy somewhere else. But just because maybe his strengths don't fit the mold as to what the Bruins are maybe looking for doesn't mean they should shun him or not give him an opportunity to grow. Because, some of it comes down to, again, Lysell in his own game, right? He's got to go out there and produce and prove guys like Marchand wrong, right? In terms of like, hey, I won't be winning a Selke in the next couple of years, but yeah, watch me dangle through these three guys and let me set up this tap-in goal for you, right? Like, that at the end of the day is what kind of can change that rationale there. So I don't view it as like a shot across the bow from Marchand or gatekeeping that spot, right? If Lysell offers the highest ceiling there, I think you roll with him and let him develop along the way. But But I think it's probably just a reminder that, as intriguing and exciting as a guy like Lysell should be, and he should be knocking at the door, and they should give him an opportunity, it's not just going to be handed to him. And I think the Bruins know that. I think we all know that going into it, but having the captain of the team kind of reinforce that, I think just is another way to show that, it's not going to be, if Lysell has 1 assist over 5 preseason games and he's floating down the other end of the ice, it's not going to work for you. You got to show that, you have to make the most of the opportunity handed to you and take that job, because again, he's the most exciting player, but the Bruins have a whole lot of contingency plans in place behind him if it doesn't work out or he doesn't impress enough in the next couple of months.
That's the thing. And I think with a guy like Lysell and any young player, you have to understand there are going to be mistakes, and, sometimes big mistakes. I mean, you even look at Matt Poitras last year, and I know we'll talk a lot about him throughout training camp, but like, he's someone who plays, a Bruins kind of style, and that he's a two-way forward. I mean, he's not like, some brute physical force, but two-way forward who can, chip in offensively quite a bit. There were games when you'd be like, oh, I totally didn't even realize he played. And now granted, he's 19, or he was 19, so it's a little bit different, but he's still a young player. And I think with Lysell, like, if he, I think in a 20 game sample size, there are going to be some great offensive plays that you're like, holy crap. And then there are going to be some defensive miscues where you're like, how did that happen? How do you do that? And I think that comes with developing in the NHL, and any coach needs to allow any young player to make those mistakes. And it just comes down to, is it worth it to leave that player out there to make those mistakes? And oftentimes it is, because, with Lysell, a guy like Lysell's ceiling, you hope that he hits that. The question is, obviously Brad Marchand has no problem playing with a younger player. But at the same time, in a contract year when offense matters and you're looking to win, and, you want competent line mates, or at least reliable line mates, is he going to be open to someone like a Fabian Lysell if there are going to be those defensive issues? Are the Bruins going to be open to that? Like, that's where I kind of wonder. And again, if Lysell has a kick-ass training camp, there's no question. Like, he has to be there.
Right.
And I think it's going to, settle a lot of questions. But I just think going into it, I do wonder the openness of playing with a rookie with those, positives and negatives. I think that's a valid question to ask.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is just something where it's not like the 2017-18 team, right? Where that team was kind of in the tail end of like a legitimate, I guess, rebuild, retool, however you want to put it. Like, there was runway there for that team that was just trying to build something back up to be like, yeah, we can roll it Anders Bjork and Jake DeBrusk and all these guys. Yeah. And it was exciting, but you could see where they were at that point in terms of that, overhaul of the roster, that a lot more digestible to, or a lot easier to map out why they would do that. Now where this team, is viewed as, a contender or a team that's in the very least in the mix, you can see why there probably is maybe more of that hesitancy of putting a guy like Lysell in such a critical role. But again, you kind of look at the hand that's dealt to the Bruins. Yes, they do have Frederick, who could be in that spot and probably projects as a steady two-way player. Frederick's a guy that has kind of been underrated the last couple of years in terms of his defensive game and doing some of the little things that help out his line quite a bit. But like for Lysell, like the skill is there. And it's like, even if maybe you have to deal with one of those games where you're ripping your hair out looking at the tape the next day, or, he's doing something that leaves a lot to be desired. Like, some of that also comes with just the growing pains of operating the NHL. And if you have a game or two like that, and I know like the Bruins are in this kind of win now formula, but if those, 1 or 2 games of frustration lead to a guy like Lysell becoming a 20 goal, 45, 50 point guy down the road, or a guy that can flourish into something even greater than that, I think the long-term goal there is well worth it for a guy that is still young. He's only 21. He's cost controlled. He's a really cheap asset that has more room to grow. And he's such a unique player in a system and a team that doesn't have many guys that can kind of do what he can do when he's on his game. So I get weighing those two, mentalities in terms of Marchand and the urgency of winning now. But sooner or later, like, again, if you want to keep the same win now formula, the Bruins would keep on trading first round picks. It's just not tenable. There needs to be some at this stage of, patience and letting some of these younger guys flourish. And again, if he doesn't work out, I'd rather the Bruins go through the growing pains and maybe, put Lysell in the spot that maybe he's not ready for. And you find out in the end of November when he's got 2 goals and 4 assists in 22 games and he's not doing much at the other end of the ice, then
that's not going to sink you. That's
right,
not going to
exactly.
That's not going to sink the season. It's not like it's like, holy crap, we're done now. Like Fabian Lysell has ruined the Bruins. That'd be a great headline for someone who actually ruins the Bruins. But I also think I'm spitting bars over here. By the way, that Krejci line, that was the beginning of 17-18. Was that Bjork and DeBrusk on his left and right, if memory serves?
No, Bjork was with Marchand and he must have been with Pastrnak. Yeah, I don't know actually. Maybe
it was against the Predators, right?
Yeah,
that was that game, and DeBrusk had his first.
Maybe it was Bjork. I'm not, because I think it was still
no. You know what? I think it was Bjork, Marchand, and Bergeron, and then you had DeBrusk, Krejci, Pastrnak,
something like that. I forget, but I think both those guys
the air.
I know. Listen, Anders Bjork top line, top 6 forward didn't work out. So
unfortunate.
A little hazy. DeBrusk started with Krejci. We all know that. So
yes, and stayed there. By the way, one last thought on Lysell. I also think if he plays to what he's capable of offensively, that helps you win now. That's the biggest thing. And if he hits his stride, not until February or something, that helps you there too. So again, but it's up to him. It's up to him to take that spot. Just like it's up to you to go check out our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your picks are still live. Big questions going into the football season. Will Patrick Mahomes throw for more or less than 267.5 yards one week? Will Jalen Hurts throw for 240.5 passing yards another? Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, back to the show. So, Marchand mentioned Coyle, playing with Coyle again. That puts him on the second line. So we would assume that at least going into camp, that first line will be Zacha, Lindholm, and Pastrnak. This was something we talked about when they signed Lindholm. But again, I think that's a fairly good first line. I mean, you think about Pavel Zacha. I think now it's pretty obvious that he's going to be moved to the wing. I think that's fine. Works with Pastrnak well, and I think that two-way presence down the middle works. To me, I think that line probably stays together and at least succeeds. The only way I think that line breaks up is if that second line isn't producing and they try to move Marchand up or, try to jungle the lines. But I like the look on paper of that first line.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at David Pastrnak, put him with anyone, put him with us, and probably a pretty good line. So it certainly helps when you
Who would play the middle? I don't know. I think he'd have to play the middle.
Jesus
just
Christ,
let him take the puck and go.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I would just stand in the corner, do nothing. But no, I think having a guy that dynamic that can drive play with just about anyone is obviously a huge help. But as we kind of say, and we look at these different groupings and players, and it's all about kind of mapping out how they can take steps forward. Elias Lindholm, yes, he had a down season last year, but he's a guy that has the resume, has the track record. It's not like he's the guy that you're banking on, like maybe this is the year he hits 60 points. Like, no, he's done it a couple times. He's had 3 60-point seasons. Obviously, I think you're asking a lot for him to be the 42 goal guy that he was a few years back with Calgary. I don't think that being the case, but I think a full year next to David Pastrnak, full year next to Pavel Zacha, who I think benefits from being on the wing where you can kind of play a more simplified game, hopefully a more shot-ready kind of mentality, because every time the guy fires off a shot, it's usually like a absolute howitzer. Like it's flying past guys. Like he really needs to tap more into that. I think there's more room to grow there as well in terms of maybe just, putting the blinders on a little bit more for his game and having him play a more simple game. But I think there's a lot to like about what you can have there. Lindholm especially, even like you look at where he was last year with Vancouver, right? Like was on the third line as a center there. He wasn't going to necessarily bump out Pettersson or JT Miller. And also like even like top power play minutes, like him being on the bumper spot there on the top unit for the Bruins should help him out quite a bit. So I just think you look at all three of those guys. You don't have to worry about Pastrnak. He's going to get his points. He's going to drive play. But I think those two guys especially should fit well with him. And there's, I think, more room to grow there, both for Zacha in his role, but also I think it's not out of the question to expect really like a 60-point season from Lindholm in his first year here.
This is the thing with Lindholm. Like I keep looking at that line, and we've talked about this in predictions episodes, but like you look at that situation, right? Pastrnak on your right, Zacha on your left, top power play minutes, playing a lot, like first line, and it's expect like 70 points out of that. I don't know, like, and I know what you mean with the 60. I know I think you predicted, like you and I predicted the exact same, or like one off, like 71 and something like that or something. I've seen people who are down on Lindholm, obviously, and think that this might not work, definitely long term. But like, the situation is conducive to him producing. Like, I think every door is, he's gonna have every opportunity to put up a lot of points. And again, if he doesn't, that's on him. But I just, the situation itself lends me to believe that he's gonna have a really good year. And I know that makes me sound like I have my black and gold glasses on. But it's true. I mean, that's a good first line. You're with one of the best right wingers in hockey. And on the left side, you have a guy who has a great connection with one of the best right wingers in hockey. So like, I just, arguably the best right winger in hockey. So like, I don't see, him having a down year. Lindholm, I'm talking about. Like, I don't see it. I know that last year wasn't great. And then the third line thing in Vancouver always surprised me. And then the idea that they would keep him. So I was like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like
square peg in a round hole. Yeah. Great player. But again, like
you're set down the middle. Bruins, not so much. You want to go watch the Bruins? You want to see the preseason? You want to see any sporting event? Our friends called Game Time. Fall is beginning, which means football is back. And nothing beats a college football atmosphere. With both college and NFL games, who doesn't love a good tailgate? Get to the game with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This fall, my friends and I are going to the Patriots-Titans game in Tennessee. How will we get tickets for the game? Game Time, of course. The Super Deal has been amazing to us in the past, and there's no doubt it will be great to us again. I just love the curated deals, which make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Some other features I love are the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, and theater. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, back to the show. So one of the interesting things Marchand said the other day was sort of about his contract. Said, quote, I'm going to say this now and kind of leave it at that. I won't ever talk about contract stuff in the media. I saw a report the other day. I think it was the Hockey News. I don't know where he's getting his information. It wasn't from our side. We're not going to talk about it. Whatever goes on will stay internal between Don Sweeney and our group. I'll leave it at that. I think there's enough respect between the two sides that we can deal with it. And I have your Boston.com story open right now, Connor. So you're welcome for the page view. But it's so some have wondered, and Haggs and I talked about this yesterday on Pucks with Haggs. Was that a kind of, subtle message to Jeremy Swayman of respectfully stop talking about contractual things in the media? And I said to Haggs, I said, well, I don't know if that's really like Marchand's leadership style. Wouldn't you just kind of talk about this amongst yourselves? Would you really do it publicly? If you're against, if you're against talking contract stuff in the media, wouldn't you also be against kind of talking about someone talking about contractual stuff in the media? And Haggs made an interesting point saying, that's not, some things you don't talk about one-on-one. It'd be awkward if I went up to you in the press box and said, so what do you make? Why do you make what you make? But obviously their stuff's public. But I and he made that point, and I think it's interesting. I like that. I like talking about the theory that maybe Marchand was kind of saying, as a leader, hey, we don't talk about that stuff publicly. But also, I think Marchand also seemed kind of peeved by this Hockey News story. So you have that too, where it's like he mentions that. I think he's agitated about that. And I think he's mad at that. So, I mean, do I think he probably disagrees with how Swayman is handling this? Probably. I mean, given Marchand's comments, that is not how Swayman's handled this. But do I think Swayman was in his mind as he was saying it? Probably not.
I don't think. Yeah. As much as everyone, I think, views, especially in sports, the drama things, everyone thinks that every
and we love drama. We love drama. Yeah. We love a little fire. I like it.
But the fact everyone thinks everyone is geared up in these press conferences to drop a Succession ass quote or some Aaron Sorkin ass writing, it's like, no. Like, I do think more of it had to do with him being pissed off about that Hockey News article, which I don't know where the fuck that came from, right? I feel like all of us in the media were like the 50 Cent. We're all like, we didn't write this story. Wait a goddamn minute. So I don't know where the hell that came from in terms of like
poor Joe Porillis, friend of the show. It's like, oh man, like, did you write that story?
Yes. She immediately punches Joe. It's like, Joe, no.
Okay, that's what he gets. That's what your company gets.
It's a rough way to start captain's practice, just getting punched in the face. But no, I think it had more to do with that. I don't.
Joe didn't write the story, by the way.
Joe did not write the story. I don't really.
Let's make that very clear.
They had like a Zordon AI person fucking write it or something else like that. Who the fuck knows? But no, but I do think when you look at Marchand, I think it had more to do with being peeved about that, of his own contract negotiation. I'm sure, like as you said, like it's not really how he does things in terms of maybe being as open with contracts and those kind of things as Swayman's done, but thinking that it's all this concoction of thinking this is all premeditated of I'm going to throw a dagger at my franchise goalie who's the only reason we played into May last year. I think people are reading a little bit too much into that, to be honest. I think it more has to do with being peeved about whatever that Hockey News report was and kind of shutting it down. And Marchand's always been good at that in terms of like setting the parameters early on about stuff that he does and doesn't want to talk about and being kind of transparent with that, of his approach to it and all that. So I view it more of what we've seen from him and how he's addressed those things for years now, as opposed to him weaving in a dig at Swayman in the middle of his first press conference of the year.
Yeah, I also would like. My guess is that Swayman probably never addresses this contract situation again until after he's signed, and then you hear he'll talk about, happy to be here. And my guess is his message will be, I'm over this. I want to talk about the season and move into that. And I think we probably won't hear much from him directly on how he's feeling about this. I think that's all out there, as he made extremely clear. And there's been some reporting over the last couple of days that is new. So you had Ryan Whitney from Spit and Chicklets saying that he's hearing the Bruins offered Swayman 4 years times $6.2 million per. But then you had sort of a little bit of a conflicting report from Cam Robinson over at Elite Prospects, saying word around the campfire is that Boston and Jeremy Swayman are a lot closer to an agreement than recently reported. And I guess and maybe it's not conflicting because, then it could be around the same number. Whitney did mention, though, that the Bruins have not talked with Swayman in, I think, weeks, he said. So interesting stuff. If it is 4 years times 6.25 is what they're offering, I mean, that's much lower than we thought. Like, I mean, I've had 8 times 8 the entire time. I mean, that would be a bargain, I think, for the Bruins. Do I see Swayman accepting that? I would be shocked, given that we're at this point. I would think that number would, at least the AAV would have to be much higher.
Yeah, no, I would be. And again, like you're hearing more and more of it, maybe not being necessarily like an 8-year deal, which it seems like if that's from the Bruins camp, and we can argue, I think he's going to sign for more than 6.25. And again, like there's only so much a guy can do as an RFA, but it does seem rather low for a guy that really did have a good postseason. But you keep on hearing in these reports that it's not 8 years, that it's 4 or 5 years and kind of a longer bridge deal, if you want to call 4 or 5 years a bridge deal. You do wonder if there is like trepidation or just still intrigue from the Bruins as to what this guy is in terms, is he really a guy that should be getting an 8x8 contract? So I don't know. What's your take on where you think it should be right now?
I mean, he got lit up in the shootout today at captain's practice. So, I mean, I think $2 million a year might kind of make it work. No, I mean, in all seriousness, like, I think there's, is there trepidation on their end? There could be, in terms of, do we really just want to hand this guy 8 years, $8 million? That's, a lot of money. You're hoping it works, but as we've talked about, we talked about this when Swayman's comments first came out, where we were like, he hasn't played all that much. So like, you don't have a ton to go off of. The signs are great. The signs are awesome, but it's not like there's all this proven stuff. And I think, Swayman's looking for good money that's going to age well, that, he's not going to get screwed when the cap goes over 100 mil and he's making, way less than market value. And he's one of the best goalies in the league. I think that's his perspective. I think that's also why he's probably, if I had to assume, this is not inside information, but he's probably okay with 4 years, where it's like, give me these 4 years. I'll prove that I'm worth, let's just say it's 4 years times like 7.2. Let's say they move it up $1 million. And then when the 4 years are up, I'll prove it. And then I'll prove myself, ready for a lot more money and sort of more accurate to the market. I do think, though, like Swayman, I get being mindful of the market, but at this point in his career with what he's done so far, and like Scott McLaughlin and I were talking about this, is he the goalie to set the market? No, he's not. Yeah. Like, he could be years from now. He could be in a couple years.
If you do a 4 or 5 year, if you do a 4 and 5 year deal, then maybe he is, when he's got another Vezina or something on his resume, right?
Or a Vezina. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And so again, I think his highest, he finished like 7th in Vezina voting this year.
Yes.
Had 2 nice playoff series. Like, and I'm not trying to diminish it, but the biggest thing is just like, is that going to be the goalie to set the market? Is that going to be the goalie? And to get 10 million? No, it isn't. And it won't be, I don't think. So I mean, I like 8 times 8. I still like that because I like what he's given you. I get the Bruins not wanting to do that. But 4 years, I don't love it in the sense that, you're going to be doing this again in 3 years, but I think both sides probably would be okay with it because it's not super long term for the Bruins, where if this doesn't work out, it's like, oh shit, we're tied down for 8 years now to this guy. And if you're Swayman, it's all right, well, I can prove myself again with good money and, set the market in 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like you are operating a little bit of risk, however you want to spin it. If it is a 4-year deal, right, for the Bruins, like he could go out his first year and have a 9.26 save percentage and win the Vezina and lead you to the conference finals or a cup. And you're like, well, shit. Or maybe he regresses a little bit and it's not good news for the Bruins, but maybe that adds reassurance to them as to they want to see how this plays out a little bit more. Again, I'm with you. I would rather sign him long-term and lock him in before the cap gets really silly. Like you look at, it's comparing apples and bowling balls in terms of like the NBA and their thing. But that's a Phil Leotardo line from The Sopranos. If anyone,
I didn't know that actually, and I'll admit I didn't know it. I'm not gonna laugh
he did
through
20
it like I did with Diver.
He did 20 years in the can. Also, is what Phil Leotardo did. But anyway, I digress. But no, you look at like the NBA and like they had like guys making 4 years, 40 million, and all of a sudden it jumped out and it's like the 8th best guy on your team has signed a 4-year deal for like $91 million now. The cap is crazy. Not to say that the NHL is going to hit what the NBA did in terms of just that cap exploding, but I'd rather you get in and sign these guys that are your franchise pillars to long-term deals now as opposed to when things get really crazy in a couple of years. So that's my stance, but you can see both sides of it. If it is like a 4 or 5 year deal, I'd be fascinated to see like how much Swayman talks about whether he wanted long-term, whether it's maybe something he's fine banking on himself. Will we get the answer? Who knows? But I'd be really curious to see where kind of the line of thinking is from either the Bruins or Swayman as to how they hit that point in terms of term. Because I feel like going into this, we were all talking about the value and the payout, not really the term. We were all expected 7-8 years, but maybe that's not the case.
My biggest thing is sort of what you said of like, the 8 years, I think like giving him any term that's longer than 2 years, that's over $6.5–7 million is a bet. You're taking a gamble if you're the Bruins, but I also think it's a somewhat of a smart gamble. This is a guy that you developed. Your fingerprints you've created this. You've created him. He's shown since being up here, he's shown you really nothing but good. So like, again, it's a safe gamble. To me, I think he's going to continue to trend up. So if you sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal, he's going to command a lot more money down the road. Whereas it would just be nice if you had him for 8 years at a certain amount that maybe looked a little expensive for the next 2 years, but got better and then looked cheap by the end. I get why he wouldn't want that. I get why he would just want to I want to always make market value where pro players get in the bag. But from the Bruins perspective, I always thought that's kind of what they would have wanted, where it's like, you know what? We traded Linus Ullmark. We're putting all our chips in the middle of the table for this guy. Whereas if this is true, 4 years times 6.25, it's sort of like, we're going to put some of our chips in. We're going to keep some of them now. We're not going to throw everything in. We're going to see what we got on this next hand. And I imagine from their perspective, it's like, look, Jeremy, we traded Linus Ullmark. You're the main guy. We're going to give you a big pay bump. You're making more than Linus Ullmark was going to make for us this year. You're making more than 5.25. We're going to give you 6.25 for 4 years. So you have, some sort of long-term stability. You're still a young guy. So I get that end of it. But I think the money is going to end up being more. The term, it feels like it's now going to be shorter than 8 years. So I think that's but I think the money is going to end up being higher. You think we hear about this soon?
I hope so.
Be nice.
It'll be Friday at 6 p.m.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. It's going to be just worst possible time. People scrambling. Anyways, Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over Boston.com and the Boston Globe?
Yeah, we have covered every step of the way this season, whether it's previews, looking at lineup and roster battles, which you have that on Boston.com right now, anticipation of training camp, features, columns, all that good stuff over Boston.com and the Boston Globe. So please read all of my stuff over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's been this Bruins Beat. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. You Bruins Beat listeners. Have a great rest of your week.